So welcome everybody to the third installment of the Spring 2023 edition of the Behavioral Science Author Series. Thanks for joining us today. And my name is Silvia Saccardo, and today I'm filling in for Dave Nussbaum. So just a little bit about myself. I'm a behavioral economist. I'm a team scientist of the Behavior Change for Good initiative. And I'm an associate professor in the Department of Social and Decision Sciences at Carnegie Mellon University. And I'm very honored and excited to be here today to interview Uri Gneezy. Uri was my PhD advisor and has been my mentor throughout my career. I learned a great deal from him, and a few weeks ago he sent me a copy of his book, and it's been so fun to read about the stories and examples and research he was conducting while I was back in grad school. I was happy to see that the book also features some of our joint work. Before we start, this series is a collaboration between Zeitgeist Media and the Behavior Change for Good initiative. And I want to give special thanks to all the people who are working behind the scenes, Alex Lusher, Dana Gomez, Isabel Heck, and Cassie Bravo. So I'll be chatting with our guest, Uri Gneezy, for about 20 minutes or so. And then we have saved time for Q&As from the audience. So please start entering your questions, and you can also upvote them. Upvote the questions that you want to see Uri answer. I'm delighted today to have Uri Gneezy here. He is the Epstein Atkinson Endowed Chair in Behavioral Economics at the Rady School of Management at UCSD, my alma mater. Uri has made several groundbreaking contributions to the field of behavioral economics. He has started a lot of different lines of research that have been followed up by many, many others after him. One of the things Uri is really well known for is his ability to design very creative and yet simple, powerful experiments that uncover the mechanisms about human behavior. And he does that by testing his intuitions in the lab or in the wild. Uri has co-authored the book The Y-Axis together with John List, a book that talks about the importance of testing intuitions about human behavior or economic behavior in the wild. And today he's here to talk about his new book, Mixed Signals, How Incentives Really Work, which features a lot of Uri's similar contributions to the study of incentives. The book uses stories, examples of managerial success, as well as failure and science to talk about how incentives convey signals, which might create an intended effect, and how we can design incentive schemes that help us shape the story we want to tell and align our incentives with the goal we want to achieve. So it's really a must read for anybody. And here is the book. Oh, I cannot see it. Never mind. It's a must read for anybody who wants to design incentives that really work at changing behavior from companies want to change employees' behavior, customer behavior, sports teams, as well as parents like me who want to motivate their kids engaging in a variety of behavior. And with that, let me welcome Uri Gneezy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm very excited, and I'm really excited that I get to chat with you. One correction, you said that I was your PhD advisor. PhD advisor is for life. You know, you're not getting a new one. You're stuck.
That's true. You are my PhD advisor.
Thank you for the kind introduction.
Sure. Thank you really for being here. So let's get started. So the book is called Mixed Signals. So maybe you can start telling the audience a little bit about what you mean by signals.
So the point is that every incentive that we give also send a signal about what's important for us. It's not just that I give you money to do something. When I give you money, I also tell you something about what I want, what I expect you to do, what I want you to do, and what are my values. And very often people ignore this signal, and that's the reason many of the incentives that we see don't work. And I want to make sure. So if you take a class in incentives in a business school, if you take it from a psychologist, it will be about the mushy stuff, about how we go to work because we need some fulfillment and we need to feel good about it. You can take same title of class with an economist who say, no, you just go because you need to pay in the supermarket, you need to pay the rent. That's why you do it. Two straw men. And what I try to do in the book is try and connect these two, because clearly I go to work because of the mushy stuff and because I need the money, right? I want to be a good worker. I want to do well. And I also want to earn money. And the question is, how can you create incentives such that they will send a signal that will be in line with with the other goals of people. So instead of crowding out, instead of changing your views about the world in the wrong direction, I want to try and steer it in the direction that is desired.
Do you have any examples from your own life that you want to share?
Right. So I start the book with an example with my son, Ron. I shouldn't be proud of this example, but it's something that got me thinking about this. When he turned 3, that's a great age because they start communicating with you. They're not just crying or smiling. They're actually communicating with you. And when they start communicating, they also start lying. That's what people do. And what parents do is tell the kid, look, Ron, my son, Ron, you shouldn't lie. Only bad people lie. That was fine. And a couple of months after he was 3, we went to Disney World. And at the entrance, I saw the sign at the cashier. It said, under 3-year-old, it's free. Over 3-year-old, you have to pay $117. With no hesitation, I said it is almost 3, which wasn't really a lie because it was almost 3, but from the wrong side. And we went in, everything was good. By the way, if you search Google, you'll see that there are billions of people billion of entries looking for this. So I'm not that creative in cheating over there. Half an hour later, my son, pulls my hand and asks me, Daddy, you told me that only bad people lie, and you just did. So what's going on, right? And the point is that I can send a signal about how important it is to tell the truth, how only bad people lie. But then when it came to me having incentive to lie, I did, right? So that's the mixed signal, and you should try and avoid it. Because the next thing that happened is that my son, Ron, in the next attraction that was 4 years or over, went with lots of confidence and told the person over there, yeah, I'm over 4-year-old, right? He learned that that's what you're supposed to do. And if you think about behavioral economics and you think about ways to solve this kind of problems, so one way could be asking you to bring your birth certificate, the birth certificate of the child. But that's not what you do in Disneyland, right? It's one big happy family you want to be. Another solution is to ask that the child will be there, like in my case, and then you have to lie in front of the child. And then you can even take it further. You can say that the cashier will ask the child themselves, how old are they? So for example, if the cashier would have asked Ron, did you have your 3rd birthday already? That would have been a stronger kind of incentive. So I could definitely train Ron to say no, but that's a really heavy-handed.
Feels like a real lie.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great example to start the book. And in the book, you talk about how incentives convey signals to others as well as to the self, right? So do you want to elaborate on that? Tell us what you mean.
Right. So the signaling that we have, I think that to most people in this webinar, it's not going to be new, but we send signals to others. We want to impress other people. That's one thing that we do. And the other thing that we want to do, the other type of signals, is to ourselves, because in many cases, we use our actions in order to learn about how good we are. And good could be, it doesn't have to be good in the normative definition of it. It's just, I send signal to myself and I want to learn from this. And the incentives can really break this. So think about, you see your neighbor, you live in Pittsburgh, it's cold in the morning, you see your neighbor going with a large bag filled with soda can to the recycle center, say with 100 soda can to the recycle center. You'll probably think, wow, she's great. She really cares about the environment, right? And great neighbor. She probably feels the same about herself because she could have thrown it away, but she chose to actually make the effort and recycle it. Great. Now imagine that someone introduces a 5-cent incentive to recycle these soda cans. Exactly the same story. You see your friend your neighbor going to the recycle center. Now you're saying she's cheap for $5 in the ice, in the cold. Come on, right? And the signal that she sends to herself is also weakened because now she'll say, before that she said, look, I'm a good person. I care about the environment. Now it's, I'm a cheap person that only cares about $5.
Money.
So
which might then lead fewer people to do it, right? Because they want to avoid this negative signal. Yeah, and this connects to, for example, in the book you have examples about paying for blood donations and other domains like that, where the incentives could really change the signal.
Exactly.
So in the book, you raise several examples of when people want to encourage one thing but end up incentivizing another thing. And so how do these mixed signals happen and what to do about them?
Right, so economists call it multitasking, and there is a long literature dealing with it, but it's not really a behavioral, and it deals with, I think, a different aspect of it. So think about quantity versus quality. In many cases, it's very easy to give you money for quantity, but if you just pay for quantity, quality is going to suffer, right? So I can tell you that, so the mixed signal comes from the fact that I can tell you how important quality is for me, how much I want you to make sure that customers are happy, that you drive safely, whatever the measure of quality. But then if I give you incentive for quantity, that's what you're going to focus on. So the mixed signal comes from the fact that your statement and what happens is different. You can think about creativity. I can tell you how important it is to be creative, but being creative means that you increase the variance. So there is higher chance of really good outcomes, and there is also higher chance of failure. So if you want to be safe, you can just go and do very same as other people did, a tweak on an experiment in our case, or whatever it is in the real world. If you're creative, you're going to take more risks, and there is a higher chance of failure. If you punish failure, then it's really bad because you're not incentivizing the right thing. So it's not that you should always say, oh, great, you failed, I really appreciate it. You need to see why it happened. If it happened because you didn't go to work, you didn't put effort, you don't understand what you're doing, then it's not good. But if it happened because in our world, again, you ran an experiment, you had a great intuition, it didn't work out. It happens to me all the time. Sometimes you learn from the fact that it didn't work out, sometimes you don't, but many times you fail in the sense that it's not what you hoped, the outcome is not what you hoped. In these cases, you shouldn't punish that person, because if you punish, you'll get less creativity. Think about teamwork, right? I can tell you should cooperate with your people, with your coworkers, you should work hard on that. But if I give you incentive for personal success, that's not what's going to happen, right? If I'll just promote you. So think about mentoring in the workplace. That's a behavior that is not rewarded. And if you want me to do it, and on the other hand, give me incentives based on just my own performance, I will not do it, right? And the workplace is going to suffer. So you need to find ways of solving these problems.
Or you might do it less well if you feel like,
right.
Yeah.
Right. You wouldn't
Definitely.
care about it as much as you should.
Yeah. In the book, you have some nice examples from soccer.
Right. So imagine that you are you're facing the goal, right? You have two decisions. You can either try to get to score it yourself and say that you have 20% of doing it if you're doing it yourself, or you can send an assist to someone else on the side, and that person has a 70% chance of scoring. Clearly for the team, it's much better that you'll send the assist and you'll have a 70% chance of a goal rather than a 20% chance of a goal. But imagine that you live in a world like many of the sports teams that we have, in which you get rewarded if you score the goal yourself. Right? So I want to attract the best scorers, the best players. I want to reward them, because otherwise I won't get the best people. But if I have this kind of incentives in which you get much more for scoring yourself than sending the assist, then you'll try to do it yourself, right? And reduce the chance that we'll win. Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. And so what can we do about it? Like,
So it's a good question, because because you do want to attract the best people. You do want to attract them to put a lot of effort in personal success. You don't want free riding, right? What I do emphasize in the book is that you need to be the message that you have and your goals should be in line with your incentives. So quantity versus quality is another example, right? Sometimes I really care. I am a low-cost factory. I really care about quantity. I care less about quality. That's fine, but then don't have a message. Don't tell your workers, look, I really want quality, and then incentivize quantity. Make sure that it's in line. If you really care about personal success, say it.
So you have an example in the book from the medical industry and the fee for service treatment, and in the book you discuss how that might create perverse incentives to overtreat. And there, like, how can we solve it? Like, how can we design incentive schemes that
so that's a very sad, right? It's a very sad example of the quantity versus quality. So basically, much of our healthcare is based on fee for service. It means that when you go to the doctor, they're getting paid per scan that they send you, per test that they send, per procedure that they send us. So they send us to many more than we need. And if you look, we had it in our joint paper, we had the statistics. Look at C-sections, for example. You can think about 3 types of cases. Women that really need it. They go there, it's clear they must have C-section. That's a life-threatening situation, they need it. Then you have women that clearly don't need it. There is no question about that. In the middle, you have a gray area in which you can decide, well, it can go either way, maybe we'll do it. Now, imagine that you are the physician in the delivery room. You can have a regular delivery that will take longer and you will not be compensated for it extra. Or you can have a C-section and the hospital will pay you $1,000 if you do it. In these gray areas, the evidence showed that this incentive really changes what physicians do. They're much more likely, when you have incentive to operate, they are much more likely to operate. It's true for C-section, for back surgeries, and many others, right? So that's a wrong incentives that really create over-treatment, which is bad from health perspective. It's bad from the cost perspective, from every perspective.
Right, and then switching to like, how could we add an incentive, like change the incentive in order to motivate like maybe quality instead of just quantity in this domain?
Right. So I think it's a very good question. On a personal level, imagine that, and that's a true case. I had back problems and I went to a surgeon who told me that I need a back surgery. But I knew that he's going to operate on me, and that, first of all, so that's what our research showed. It doesn't mean that the physician himself, in my case, knew that he's recommending something that I might not need. He can convince himself through self-deception that I need it. So what I did was going to another physician that was clear that is not going to operate on me. We asked for her opinion and only then made the decision, right? So try to find a second opinion of someone who is not connected in any way to the incentive. That's on a personal level, right? That's on a personal level. And the system level, and I think that many hospitals, many providers are moving towards this. We need some kind of pay for performance, that really the health of the health and well-being of the patient will be at the center of what we have. Right. So think about a sad thing to think about on Friday morning, but think about end of life, right? So you talk with oncologists and they keep offering chemotherapy, for example, even when the outcome is clear, right? The outcome is clear and very bad and very soon. And the chemo is really, it has its cost, right? So you suffer. Definitely. And the alternative is to offer some kind of end-of-life palliative care that will, maybe you live a bit shorter, but the quality of life will be much higher. The problem would be that if you go for chemo in the hospital, that's going to get the hospital a lot of money through the insurance reimbursement. End of life won't. So that's an example where it's really sad, but I think that the incentives do change our behavior. And right. If I just to close this, the mixed signal comes from the fact that no hospital management will tell its physician, you should maximize profit per patient. That's our goal, right? The message is always patients' care.
We care about, right, patients. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's very interesting. So moving on, in the book, you talk about how incentives change the meaning of a behavior and shaping the story, right? And the book is full of examples of incentives gone wrong. And I wanted to ask you about one of your seminal work on the late pickup and daycare that you've done in Israel.
Right. So we had this old paper, Aldo Rustakini and I, in which we looked at what happens when you impose this very small fine for parents coming late, and we saw that it actually increased the number of parents coming late. Recently in Wales, there was a nice real life example of this. So they had a problem that parents, any parent can identify with this. You want to go on vacation, but you can do it only during the breaks in the school, and then it costs much more. Everything is more crowded, everything is less pleasant. The solution, take your kid for a week before or after the official break, and everything will be fine. The schools didn't like it, of course. So they imposed a 60-pound fine for parents to take their kids for a week like that. And what they saw was that indeed more parents, as the paper with Aldo showed, more parents actually took their kid. And now it was, before that it was, look, we just don't do it, right? The school doesn't want us to do it. That's not the right thing to do. And now it is, it's 60 pounds. We're going to save 500 pounds and the vacation is going to be so much nicer. Let's just take them, right? So it changes the meaning. Instead of, I need to pick up my kid on time, or I shouldn't take my kid out of school, to, is it worth the money? Yes, it is. Let's do it.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's really a nice example of your research with Aldo. You also have the example that from the book of an Italy-based example. Given that I'm Italian, I saw it with the Trulli in Puglia.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So it's about how I call it stakes and mistakes, and I love this kind of examples. That's my hobby, to collect them. So if you go to Puglia, that's the heel of the Booth of Italy. Really beautiful place, amazing food. One of the things that you see is very funny structures that you see only there. They are kind of shaped like this. Turns out that if you know what you're doing, you can dismantle the roof in a couple of hours and then rebuild it back in a couple of hours. So why did they do it? At the time, so Puglia was always on the side. No one really cared about it. It's kind of far away. But the king of Naples used to tax them. And now the tax was determined based on whether you had a roof or not. If the structure had a roof, that's a house, then you pay high taxes. If not, no. So each time they would hear that the tax collector is coming from Naples, they would very quickly dismantle the roof, put it on the side, didn't pay taxes. The tax collector went back, they rebuilt the house, right? So incentive can shape the houses we live in.
Right, that's a nice example of this. In the book, you also talk about how incentives can be used to identify or diagnose problems, and so you have some examples of how you have done that in your own work. You have examples from education, from the PISA competition, for example. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you did?
Sure. So PISA, those of you who don't know, it's for 15-year-old kids all around the developed world. They just take them, they show up to school, tell them, here it is, you have 3 hours to answer this. Don't worry, you will never know the outcome. Your teachers will never know, your parents, no one will know apart from someone in Brussels that will know, that will look at the data. And the results of this PISA is really used for policy. So places that get lower index on the ranked countries according to the success. Countries that are ranked lower really suffer and really try to see, oh, so Finland, for example, came up high. Everyone goes to Finland to try and understand what they do. The assumption in this is that the test tells us about the ability of the kid. And what we said, it's with Sally Sedov, John List, and a couple of other people, what we said was that basically you're measuring the ability of the kids, like I said, but also the effort that they put on the test. Now, I'm 55 already, but I can still remember myself 40 years ago. If you would have told me, look, sit down, do this test, no one will know about it, I would say, yeah, sure. And I wouldn't do it, right? So there is also, it's not just the ability, it's also how much effort you're willing to put in the test itself. And that's what we wanted to do. We compared the #1 ranked, which is Shanghai, with the US, which is ranked in math around 35 in the world. What we did, first we gave them just the questions with no incentives. We saw similar differences as in the official PISA. Then we gave them incentives to do well on the test. So they didn't know about it in advance. They couldn't prepare to it. When they sat down, we gave them incentives to do better. And what we saw is that the Shanghai students didn't go up because they probably hit already the higher level that they could. Mm-hmm. But the American kids really improved, right? So for the American kids, giving them motivation really helped and really made them much better. So I think that what we learned from this is that it's not just about the ability, it's also about how much effort they put, and that could be different between different cultures.
Yeah, that's a great example of how, this test reflects not only like the ability, but also the intrinsic motivation of those who are doing the test. And so right. Are you saying that every time people go around to do this PISA test, now we should make sure that the motivation is really high for these kids?
Right. So I definitely, living as a professor, I have very relaxed life, apart from when I talk about incentives with educators. Then these nice people are after me with, they want to kill me. And no, I do not say that we need to pay kids in order to do well in the exam. I'm saying that we need to understand that that's part of the problem. And by the way, it could be that this motivation to do stuff, even if you're not rewarded, is something really important in the character of the kids, right? So it could be that the kids that do stuff that is not rewarded it's actually an important thing that you're picking up, but it's not the ability to do math.
Right. And yeah, and your point is like we can use these experiments and incentives to diagnose the problem.
Exactly.
You also have a few more examples of that, including our joint work. Do you want to discuss a bit about how we use incentives to understand the processes behind bias recommendations?
So think about the financial advisors. So it's very similar to the healthcare that we said. Financial advisors sometimes are getting incentives to recommend one option relative to the other. And what we constructed, it was together with Rule, how do you pronounce his last name?
Van Dyson.
Yes.
He's going to kill me for not
and Marta Sarah Garcia, right.
Yeah.
We wanted to see what happens. So imagine that you have option A and option B. Think about it as two lotteries. First, we ask people, please recommend one. You're the sender, let's call you. Please recommend one to the receiver. The receiver will not know which option is which, but we'll just see your recommendation. We saw that the vast majority recommended A. Now we told them, here's your two options. If you recommend B, we'll give you $1. Now choose what to recommend. Huge difference towards B. Many more people recommended B. Now the question is, do I know that I'm biased? Or is it something that I don't know? We're talking about two different groups, right? So the way we identified it is that we had a group, a third group, in which we told them, please look at this, think what you're going to recommend. Don't tell me, don't tell anyone, just think whether A or B is better. And then a minute later, we told them, by the way, if you recommend B, you'll get $1. So now we are like in the second group. So if you don't care about lying, you can just say B, no problem. If you do care about lying, now you cannot really deceive yourself to thinking that B is actually better. So now you know that you are lying if you're recommending B. And what we saw is that this group, the one that learned about the incentives only after they decided what to recommend, was very similar to the control. So they ignored the incentives. And the conclusion is that we have this very good mechanism. If we know that recommending B in this case is going to give us more money, we'll find a way to convince ourselves that B is actually better.
Right, and it's another example of how we can design experiments and use incentives to identify the problem. People might think that doctors who overtreat or financial advisors who give biased recommendations might do it knowingly, right? But our work has shown that no, it's actually they want to be ethical. They just don't realize that they're falling prey to incentives.
Right. So no back surgeon says, "Oh, I need a new BMW. Let's do the surgery." They say, "Yeah, well, this guy might do well without it, but it's probably better." Right.
Right, and this arises more when the decisions are subjective, when there is ambiguity, and so on. That's fascinating. Okay, moving on. I wanted to talk about how you have a section of the book about how incentives can be used to create habits or even to break habits. Do you want to tell us about it?
Right. So I think that many of us have good habits that or want to have better habits or less of the bad habits. If you don't, you're a boring person. And if you look at it, say people who want to exercise more, you know that, or many of us, I know about myself, and I know that many of my friends are like this. We have periods in our life in which we exercise very routinely and everything is great and we are happy to go and exercise. And then we have periods in which we can't get ourselves from the couch and the only physical activity is changing movies in Netflix. Why is that, right? So one of the reasons could be that once you're into an activity, once you do an activity for enough time, the next time is simpler, what economists call stock of behavior. So if you do something for a month, the next time is going to be easier. Gary Charnas and I tested this by giving students money to go to the gym for a month. So we had a group that just a control, that we just observed how often they went to the gym, and we had a group that we paid to go to the gym. Now our students, we paid them $100. If you pay our students $100, they'll do anything you want, almost. That wasn't an issue. The question was what's going to happen once we stop paying them? No more incentives. Now, if you can think about crowding out, now they'll be less likely to go, or maybe it has no effect, or it could create some kind of habit formation. And that's what we found. So we found that when we stopped paying them, the students that got paid, the students that were in the treatment group were much more likely to continue and go to the gym even after the incentives were removed. So you can think about it as, the first time it's really painful and you don't know where to park your car and it smells really bad and whatever. After a month, you enjoy the smell already, you know where to park, you have a routine in which you do it on, I don't know, Tuesday and Saturday. Everything is easier to do. And with incentives, we can get you started and get this incentive.
Right, incentives remove the initial barrier, right?
Exactly. And you can use it on yourself. So if you have this understanding, you can say, look, I know that now I'm going to suffer. I'm going to feel that the suffering is much higher than the benefit. But if I'll keep doing this, that's going to change. So I'm going to force myself to do it for a month and then only then reevaluate.
Right. So this, I love this research, and it started a lot of studies on how to get people to exercise, and some of the follow-up work tries to follow people for a long time and replicated your finding. But what we also see is that when there are breaks, right, then the behavior doesn't persist. And I was thinking about it yesterday, like how can we should we use incentives at the right moment, time them with these breaks so that we can keep up the motivation.
Right. So I think that that's the holy grail of this literature, and I don't think that we know. So in some cases, if you pay pregnant women not to smoke, that's fine. Because even if they'll go back to smoking later, you really care about the time when they're pregnant, and just paying them for this period could be important enough. But in many other cases, like the example of exercising that I said before, we don't really know how to maintain the habit over time. And I think that's really challenging. There are some very nice experiments trying to do that, but we're still learning, I think.
Right. Maybe now it's a good time to start moving on to the questions from the audience. So I'm scrolling them to see. Okay, so one question. Okay, what are your thoughts on how incentives were used in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic? Once incentives are removed, are there strategies that can ensure the desired behavior continue? It seems with behaviors such as mask wearing or vaccination, the opposite effect was seen once incentives were removed, compared to the exercise examples you share.
Right. So think about a thought experiment. Imagine that someone approaches you and asks you, we have this new drug against headaches. It doesn't have side effects, but we need to test it. Are you willing to take part? You'll only need to take one pill and we'll pay you $50. Sure, many people do it. That's how the FDA basically does things. Now imagine the same story, but they'll pay you $50,000 for doing this. Now you're going to say, you might take it, right? But it's like, you'll be worried, right? Why are they paying me so much? So some of these incentives were like, $1 million lottery ticket. One of the people that will get vaccinated in, I don't know, Pennsylvania this week will get $1 million. Then you might say, well, if they're paying me $1 million, that must be really bad, right? So that's the worry with these kind of things. It also a bit changes the focus of why you're doing it. So for me, the incentives that I really liked with COVID were incentives that were connected to why you need to get vaccinated. So you can say, look, think about your local coffee shop. They cannot be open until enough people are vaccinated, because otherwise it's going to be dangerous. So we want to help them get vaccinated. That helps them. And we also give you $50 gift card to go and use over there, right? So to tie it to the activity that you want without crowding out. That's what I tried to say at the beginning, that how can you use the incentives to actually strengthen the message that you want to say.
Right. And during the pandemic, we saw a variety of different incentives, like from the $1 million lottery that you mentioned to free, I don't know, like free
entry to the museum.
Right. Exactly. Right. And so you're saying like the latter incentives might be more effective.
I like them much more because I think that they connect. The message is very much in line with what you want to say. The message of the incentive. The message of the incentives is, we want to open the museum. We can do it only if you get vaccinated. Please go get vaccinated and we'll let you enter for free. or the free ice cream, or whatever, beer, or whatever it is that you want in the local store,
Right. This reminds me of some of your work where you leverage psychological insights in the incentive design, right? For example, by targeting salient mental accounts.
Right. Shall I talk about it? Or
yeah, sure. If you want.
So mental accounting, basically, I think that we all know that there are some things that we care about more and less, and we have different budgets. And what we saw is that, indeed, without getting into the details, that if I give you a reward, say that you want to buy a car, and you go to this company's website, and they offer you a $500 discount if you buy the car through them. Well, it's a $20,000 car. $500 doesn't look that big. It's nice, and you'll take it into consideration. Now, imagine that instead of that, I'll give you $500 in gas card to fill up your car. Now, that's a very different story. Instead of thinking about it as 500 out of 20,000, I think, wow, I can really fill up my car for a long time with this. I hate fueling. I hate paying for gas. Now I can get it for free. It can have a much stronger effect, and that's what Katie Baca and I found.
That's great. I'm moving on to more questions from the audience. Okay, no, never mind. Do you think that incentives differ from a society to another? Can one society in the Middle East, for example, benefit from a kind of incentive that a neighbor society won't?
So I think that it's a great question, and the answer is no. It's very different between societies. So I talk about incentives to buy Prius or hybrid cars. Now, the incentives that I talk about will not work on someone who wants to buy a pickup truck. Silva, if you're into pickup trucks, giving you incentives to buy a hybrid is not going to work, right? And in general, culture, understanding the culture is really important. I live in the US for 22 years now. It took me a long time to understand, for example, that when an American tells me, let's do lunch without saying when, that means that they don't want to see me again, right?
Sure.
So and in Israel, after a talk in Israel, if someone tells you, yeah, it was okay, that's equivalent to an American tell you it was amazing, right? So you need to know how to translate cultures, and that definitely true for incentives as well.
Yeah, I have it when people ask you, how are you, right? And as an Italian,
you tell them, right?
You tell them, and that's not what they want to hear.
Right.
Okay, moving on. One more question that got some upvote goes back to the healthcare context. In the healthcare context, do you think all the decision makers are even aware of the incentives when they make decisions? So we touched upon it a little bit.
Right. So that goes back to our discussion. I really think that you talk with the back surgeon, they have one solution to every problem. You go to them, they know how to operate on you. And I really think that I really hope that my doctors, when I go to them, are not knowingly biased. They don't really say, like I said before, oh, I need to replace my BMW. Let's cut 2 more people today. I really hope that they don't do this. I really hope that what happens is that they are influenced. We know that they're influenced by incentives. I really hope that it's subconsciously. So they don't really know that that's what drives them. One of the things that I learned from thinking about incentives for so many years is to observe when I think that I analyze a situation in an objective way, but actually, no, I'm not. I'm very biased because of my incentives. And incentives is definitely not just money. It could be many other things.
Right. I'm curious if you looked at cultures, religions with eye mixed signals and have examples in the book.
Religious? No, I did not.
Or culture?
Culture. So culture, yes, culture, absolutely. One of my favorite, maybe part of the book, which no one asks me about, is about trying to work on reducing female genital mutilation with the Maasai. So the female genital mutilation, I don't want to get into it, but it's a horrible thing that you do. And the question is, how can you really go into this culture and try to change this? And it's not a minor behavior to change. We should not respect the culture. It's many people say that it's worse than a rape, right? So it's really something that needs to be changed, and we have all the right to try and change it. And what we try to do is to see what kind of incentives will change the behavior over there. It might be too long to get to it now, but the idea over there is that in many cases, it is done because of an economic reason. So the mothers and fathers of the girl want her to go through FGM because then her value in the marriage market is going to be higher. Just, in a very, cruel way, she will be worth more cows if she went through FGM. And we try to change this by giving alternatives, sending them to high school, which actually increases their value in the marriage market even more without going through this horrible thing.
Yeah, the book has a whole chapter about how you can use incentive to change community traditions and norms.
Yes.
Yeah. In the remaining minute, Uri, do you want to give us some tips for designing effective incentive? Like, what are the main takeaways that you want the audience to walk away with?
Right. So the main takeaway is, first of all, use common sense. Don't just say, oh, incentives work. So very often I go to companies and they say, we try incentives, it didn't work. And the way I think about it is that you went to a bad Japanese restaurant and your conclusion is that Japanese food is bad. No, you just went to a bad restaurant. That's what you did. The same is true about incentive. You just designed the incentives wrongly. In many cases, use common sense. Think about the signal that you're sending with the incentive and make sure that it's in line with what you want it to be. And the second part of it is related to what you said about the y-axis. You need to test it. You need to do a field experiment, very much like A/B testing. Just try incentive, test them. If it works well, you're a genius. If not, adopt it a bit, change a bit, make sure that it's better. And by the way, it's not that once you find incentives that you are happy with, you should stick with them forever, because people will learn how to game your incentives. So it's a dynamic process in which it always makes sense to have a small part of your operation testing whether your incentives are currently the best you can do. So first of all, use common sense, and second, test what you're doing.
And so why do companies don't test enough?
Because they think, so many managers, many CEOs think that their job is to know. So when I go to a company, I don't say, I know what price you should have. I say, look, I know how to design a test that will tell you what's the right price. But many CEOs, many executives think that their job is to know. So they're afraid of testing, I think.
Which goes back to incentivizing testing and incentivizing failure. Yep. Uri, thank you so much for this. It was a pleasure to be here and interview you about the book. And the book is coming out on March 21st. So it's a very nice read. So yeah, it's great that we got a chance to talk about it. So thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. Thanks a lot, everyone.